Hey guys, first Regardsman here. I'll be talking about every single melee weapon in Space Marine 2 patch 10.3 and tier listing them. And now patch 10.0 did release the new Power Axe. This was the first melee weapon ever added to Space Marine 2. And today I want to go through all of them and just rank them a bit. So first up, we have the Chainsword. Now, historically, the Chainsword was the strongest melee weapon in Space Marine 2, especially at launch. It had the best CHP recovery, the best moveset, and the stat distributions were quite good on it. Though I will say, these days, it is not the top of the line anymore. There are some better ones, but the Chainsword is still very strong. The full throttle combo skip is still one of the best moves in the entire game, though in patch 10.0, the combo skip did get nerfed a bit. It has a delay after the initial bash, which does kind of suck. That's kind of like a little bit of a portion that happened, or a little bit of a nerf that happened due to the Heroic Chainswords edition, because the Heroic Chainsword has like a punch into bash. It's kind of a dumb thing, but like either way, they nerfed the full throttle combo skip, which does suck. That being said, the Chainsword is still a very powerful weapon. The perk Swift Recovery is amazing. Stomp is a great horde clear tool. This thing has a great CHP recovery, especially on classes like Vanguard. All of the weapon types, balance, block, and fencing are strong for the Chainsword. I would still say it's an A tier weapon. Very strong option. You really can't go wrong with the Chainsword. It's my preferred weapon on both Vanguard and Tactical. This thing has been in a good spot forever, and it has not really changed all that much. Next weapon we have is the Combat Knife. Now, the Combat Knife is on the Tactical class, the Vanguard, and the Sniper, and is by far the best on Sniper. The tool Shadow Stab, or the perk Shadow Stab, is the best damage option on this thing. That's really the selling point of the knife. Light combos in Space Marine 2 are very weak, and heavy attacks are just the way to go in this game, and unfortunately, the light combos on the Combat Knife are just garbage, so Shadow Stab kind of makes up for that, but classes like the Vanguard and Tactical, they really can't take full advantage of Shadow Stab like the Sniper can with Camo Cloak, especially with its Tactical Ambush perk for 150% bonus melee damage out of Cloak. That is a very strong option. I think the Combat Knife is really good, especially the Block Combat Knife for boss damage. Very strong option still. Maybe not quite as strong as the Chainsword, even on Sniper, but, you know, if we just take Sniper into account, I would still say it is A tier. It's a really good weapon for sure. It still has a decent horde clear, not quite as good as the Chainsword or Power Sword, but by no means is it terrible, even on Tactical and Vanguard. If you want to use this, I would still put it up here because it is definitely A tier in my opinion. Now, the next melee weapon here is the Power Fist. What can we say about the Power Fist? This weapon is OP. This is the strongest melee weapon in Space Marine 2. The thrust jab on the block version can outright one-shot every Majoris in the game on the Bulwark class, because funnily enough, the Overcharge Prestige perk on Bulwark does work with Thrust Jab currently, and the Overcharge perk on Assault does not work at all with it, which is kind of lame. It's just the way it is. But either way, the Power Fist has a stupidly long range. It can punch a Zoan Thrope out of the sky, it can punch a Neurothrope out of the sky, it can deal significant damage to bosses or multiple bosses at once. It is kind of ridiculous how OP this thing is now. This is by far one of the most broken weapons in all of Space Marine 2 when you actually get all the block charges on it, and it's just ridiculous. It's the best way to put it. Unfortunately, the light attacks on this weapon also suck ass. It is pretty much just a heavy attack tool, but that's really all it needs to be, because this weapon is simply bonkers. I will also mention that it has perks like Focus and Tension that give you a 50% health damage reduction while you are charging your melee attack below 30% HP, which is also absurd because most melee weapons in this game do not give you any type of damage reduction, and at least like they don't give you anything beyond like a little bit of range damage reduction, and this one just gives you a fat 50% HP damage reduction. It's just the best melee weapon in the game, probably the best weapon in the game, period. Maybe I'll go like an overall tier list on top of this at some point, but for now, Power Fist is definitely S tier. It is one of the best boss hunting tools in the entire game, and it is by far the best boss hunting tool for melee, period. And it's also only on Bulwark and Assault, so really only they get the full benefit out of this weapon. But still, that being said, S tier for sure. It's in a league of its own. This weapon is bonkers ever since it got buffed. And also, if you're unaware, the perk Tide of Battle does not take this thing's thrust jab from 4 to 8 meters. It takes it from 10 to 20, so you can get like a 20-meter range on your Power Fist, which is kind of absurd. It's just a busted weapon. That's the best way to put it. Next weapon we have here is the Power Sword. Now, the Power Sword is my favorite melee weapon in all of Space Marine 2. I think it is proven that this is the coolest melee weapon in the entire game. Its moveset is super fluid. Every single version, fencing, balanced, or block feel great. Even the Xenophase Blade is amazing, even though that's not on this list because we're talking about the normal ones. Either way, Power Sword has a great moveset, amazing horde clear. Power rate got buffed way back when. Now its heavy attacks do a ton of damage. You can even hit zoanthropes out of the sky with this thing. I'd actually go as far to say I think it's actually better than the Chainsword currently. The only thing kind of holding back the Power Sword is its CHP recovery. It's not quite at the level of like a Chainsword, so there are moments where you can't really trade into an enemy. If you try to do that, you will just lose your HP, which does suck. But that being said, the Power Sword's moveset is really good for getting in on enemies. It give you a 20% range damage reduction upon going on like a sword combat style switch. That is also very useful versus Chaos. I think it's currently my preferred melee weapon on every single melee class it is on, which is unfortunately 2 for Vanguard, no, excuse me, not Vanguard, Assault and Bulwark. But either way, Power Sword, 8 tier for sure. I would put it over Chainsword. I think everybody likes a Power Sword in this game. Fencing Power Sword is one of the best feeling weapons in all Space Marine 2. Block Power Sword had a speed buff just like the Chainsword did. Feels a lot better now, and overall, this weapon is just a ton of fun, very strong, and I would say it's the second best melee weapon in the game currently. Next weapon we have here is the Thunder Hammer. Now, I've always been pretty partial to the Thunder Hammer. I like this weapon a lot, especially on Assault and now Bulwark after it got added to him. This weapon did get a buff in patch 10.0 and now has a 50% increased radius on its heavy attacks and charge attacks. It definitely helped it out a ton. It feels way better at picking up executes, especially with the new Chaos spawn. Now, there are a couple things really holding back the Thunder Hammer. First of all, the CHP regen for this weapon is just not at all where it should be. Some of the breakpoints are a little strange, even on the block Thunder Hammer. And my biggest problem overall with this weapon is that it is simply super susceptible to getting knocked back. The no knockback effects and hyper armor in Space Marine 2 are pretty good, but there are still a lot of things in this game that will simply force you to move. For example, if you're fighting in like a horde of guys and you're charging up your Aftershock, and Aftershock 2 is one of the hardest things in all of Space Marine 2 to pull off, and say you were surrounded by a Minoru swarm while you were doing this, you will simply have to parry the first Minoru that decides to give you a blue icon or move out of the way, and that will interrupt your Aftershock. There is practically nothing you can do outside of that. It is one of the most annoying things in this entire game because it really feels like slow weapons like this were not designed for Space Marine 2 at times. It's still a ton of fun, it's still totally viable. It's just little things like that really affect the weapon because it really should feel like a Monster Hunter greatsword from like Monster Hunter World or like basically any Monster Hunter game at all. And it really doesn't, because in Monster Hunter, a greatsword will give you every single tool you need to hyper armor through an attack and like properly position yourself. But this one, and like the way that Space Marine 2 plays, it just doesn't function quite right, even with the buffs. They say they're going to up the CHP on this thing. They think that that is the only major problem with it. I disagree with Saber on this. I think that no knockback is a far bigger problem with the CHP recovery on the Thunder Hammer. If they really want to buff this weapon up, I would give it more armor regen built into the melee weapon tree, kind of like the Power Axe has, or just give it a hyper armor no knockback and make that really powerful for it. And either way, I would say for now, Thunder Hammer is in B. It is definitely a good weapon now. The 50% radius increase really upped it a lot. If you want to say it is over the combat knife, like the combat knife's in B because it's just not that strong outside of sniper, you want to put the Thunder Hammer over it right now, I could honestly be convinced, but for now I'm putting it in B. Thunder Hammer, it just needs a few tweaks because the base game AI is just kind of holding it back for now, and like the way the hyper armor mechanics work. Now the final weapon we have here is the Power Axe. This is the newest weapon, like I mentioned before. The Power Axe on launch sucked ass. The power stance was way underpowered. They buffed up the damage on that, and currently the Power Axe is still the worst melee weapon in the game. Now, it's not terrible by any means. The balance and fencing version on this one in particular are very good, because basically the Power Axe has a unique effect called Power Stance, where after you parry with it, you will go into what is called Power Stance, and there are a few perks that'll give you like a bit of a benefit for doing that. And you'll be able to hold down your right click key and shoot out a power wave. Your character will move back, you will deal damage to the enemy, and then you will follow up with a gun strike if you feel like doing that. It's a pretty strong option for things like Vanguard with tactical prowess and zone of impact. But overall, this weapon just kind of feels like a parry stick for that reason. Light combos seem to be the focus of the Power Axe, and its heavy attacks kind of suck. Unfortunately, both light combos and heavy attacks on this weapon kind of suck ass, and its perk tree is pretty limited only because you basically just have to go down the top row or go down the bottom row. A lot of the perks on this weapon just have no options. It's just like, all right, you build one down or one up because they all function with each other. Without that, you're pretty screwed. And basically the top row of this weapon is just a utility tree. It has things like armor restoration, better gun strike damage out of power stance and stuff like that. Pretty good options for gun strike builds and Vanguard builds, But as far as like the bottom tree goes, with like the block one, the block power axe not even having access to the power stance whatsoever, it is all melee on the bottom perk row, and that's my preferred, to be honest, but it just doesn't feel really good as a melee weapon. It feels like a parry stick, which is really unfortunate, and this one kind of feels left behind compared to the Thunderhammer, Combat Knife, Chainsword, Power Sword, and especially Power Fist. Like, the gap between the Power Axe and the Power Fist is like worlds apart. This one's sitting on the moon, this one's at the center of the earth, and right now, I would just say the Power Axe firmly goes into like a low B tier, just because the Power Axe, while not horrific, it definitely functions. It doesn't have the CHP recovery to be a top tier melee weapon, doesn't have the boss nuking potential, it does not have the utility for like a lot of the other builds on the block axe. So like if the block axe had power stance, it would be a lot better, but pretty much this weapon right now is exclusively an armor regen utility tool for a lot of classes, or you're building it for like shield bash scaling and stuff like that. And besides that, I don't think it's very strong, but if you like the power axe, you can still use it. It's totally viable. It's just by far the weakest currently. I don't think most people disagree with that. Anyways, guys, that is my ranking for the list of melee weapons here. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Where would you rank the melee weapons? If you have not been enlightened by the Power Fist, you should be. This weapon is broken. But besides that, thank you guys for watching. If you like content like this, subscribe for more. And as always, take it easy. Bye.